Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Arnis Luks here at the Freedom Forum, and I'd like to welcome Yves Potvin from Canada. Welcome, Yves.
Good morning.
No worries. And it's evening here in Australia, so it's all good. And it's the marvels of the internet that we can actually hold a conversation across two continents, maybe 10,000 kilometres apart. It's wonderful. Now
Yeah.
it is, yes. Now I want to just bring up the Pilgrims of St Michael, and in particular the website. I went there just before we started this program, and under subscriptions, you'll see that there's a link there or a menu item called leaflets. And I brought up a few of the leaflets, and I'm able to save them and just go through them, read them at my leisure. And I think it's absolutely beautiful that the website is just so resourceful. It's got so many faculties to it. And the thing is that the journal, the Michael Journal, is a wonderful work that the Pilgrims are doing. But there's also other things equally as important that the Pilgrims are doing, and in particular their outreach. I'd like to talk about what the Pilgrims are doing in Africa. Eves.
Yes. I was thinking about. I was just thinking about that too because I have conversation with many of the people from Africa. I enter into conversation all the time when I have a chance. But I can go back to as far as 2006
Hmm.
or so around that time. Uh, we had some people in Africa that had read Louis Evan's work, C.H. Douglas's work,
Hmm.
and they understood it right away. So they presented it to their clergy in Africa, some
Hmm.
of the countries like Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, and so on and so forth. These are all the French countries.
Hmm.
And at that time, there was a cardinal, Cardinal Agré, who died a few years ago, and he wanted to find out about the Pilgrims of St. Michael.
Hmm.
And so he came to Toronto to visit. He had a conference or something to go to, and he asked around some of the, well, some people in the Montreal area,
Hmm.
what they thought about the Michael Journal, and he just shoved it aside. Oh, it's a bunch of a bunch of time waster or something, or they call it farfelu in French.
Hmm.
Farfelu is like a clowning or something like that.
Hmm.
Anyway, so Father agreed, Cardinal agreed, decided to go check for himself. And he came right to our mother house, met all the people there, and from then on, Africa took off.
Hmm.
One of the things that he wrote in the French version of the 10 Lessons of Social Credit in French, he wrote the story of John Perkins. I don't know if you've heard of John Perkins,
John.
but he, what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking. Was it John Perkins? Was that the economic hitman?
Yes, he's the
Okay.
financial assassin.
Okay, we've actually got his book on our website. Keep going. Yep.
So he knew about the story. He knew the story, for example, of Tom St. Cara, who was murdered after announcing that he wouldn't pay his national debt, his country's debt,
Mm.
because it was done fraudulently.
Hmm.
So anyway, so that's what happened, and then from then on, we started to spread, and it all the French countries almost, or all know a little bit about. We even opened a an auditorium, Louis Event Auditorium,
Hmm.
in Africa.
Hmm.
Uh, I believe it's in Burkina Faso. I'm not sure, but I'll have to check that.
Hmm.
Basically, we have a couple of full timers over there, and they're doing the 10 lessons, and so they're spreading the word.
Hmm.
So the clergy really has the is what really made it happen.
Okay. With the 10 lessons, and I appreciate the 10 lessons, but I have heard that there is actually some type of alternative money system operating. Is that actually something that you're aware of?
You mean the local money systems?
Is it local money systems? Is that what I'm referring to?
Yeah, so that's well, there's a few countries that use that in
Hmm.
the Madagascar, Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own money system, their local money system. They have two money systems.
Mm-hmm.
So we've heard a lot about that, and it's working out well.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's always somebody trying to cause trouble. So unfortunately, sometimes we had a lot of local money. Pretty well every city
Mm-hmm.
has got some kind of a local money system,
Okay. Yep.
right?
Yep.
So they're trying to make a go of it. Some do it very successfully.
Mm-hmm.
Some others, people want to take advantage. If it
Mm-hmm.
gets big, then that's what. I mean, it's no different in Africa. They have their own little barter system or local money system.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you talk about that because I'm actually I'm a beekeeper, honey producer, only in a very small way. But I do find that there's surplus honey. And it's quite often that neighbours will do me favours, and so on the basis of that, I will give them honey. And we both feel that it's a fair and equitable outcome. And it's not really barter in the sense that okay, I'll one pot of honey and you do this or anything like that. No, we just work with a feeling of if you like graciousness towards each other. We help when it's needed. We do what's there, and then every so often a pot of honey will go out the door and they'll be pleased and I'll be pleased. The other day I had a fellow. He had a truckload of timber chips, and all the other timber chip suppliers wanted. It was roughly say $100 Australian for the load. And this bloke fronted up. He dropped it and he put it where I wanted it, and he said, "Well, normally." We just discussed what's it worth to you, and I thought, well, come here, sunshine. I've got a couple of really good pots of honey for you, and it's raw honey. It's only filtered, and it's as healthy as can be. And he was pleased to have it. And now it looks like I've got a good chance of having a regular supply of timber chips, just with a bit of honey. So it's to me alternative trading schemes don't necessarily have to be in writing. They can be just good faith between people.
Yes.
Yves,
We
Yves.
used to shake hands on deals,
Yeah,
but that's no longer the case. The
yeah.
lawyers have gotten involved, the
Mhm,
judges and the courts,
mhm,
and everybody seems to want to. It's a little bit of animosity towards each other. I think there's so many court cases now,
mhm.
especially in the states.
Yeah.
It's utterly amazing, and they think they can make money out of it. I just don't see myself. I mean, it's mind-boggling sometimes that I.
Mhm. Okay, so the pilgrims working in Africa, they're obviously explaining, if you like, the process of credit creation and the money system, the 10 lessons or 14 lessons of social credit. And in my view, if I was with a clear understanding of that and the capacity of the banks to create the money system for the country and then charge not only interest but also to even put a tick in a box for any projects, any industrial projects that the community might want to achieve, whether it's building a bridge or building a factory or anything like that, that everyone should be able to benefit from. So I think it's an inordinate power that governments legislate to make it legal what the banks are actually doing. But also at the same time, if you are living in a position where you are in in desperate need of things, I'd be most interested to see how that would work out in a sense that I mean I talk about honey, and I'm sure that you can exchange labour or you can exchange help a neighbour over the road bring a tree down because it has to be done. These are to me are all methods of working together to achieve things. Is it possible to actually work without money, Yves? Have you experienced it?
That's that's a little bit hard.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a little bit tougher. Although in small community, you can Madagascar, for example, deal with rice. That's
Okay.
their money system,
Hmm.
so they're able to deal with something without money.
Hmm.
But as a whole country, a whole world, a whole province, even a whole city, you actually need some kind of a money system.
Hmm.
Money is not bad in itself; it's a good invention.
Would you
Uh,
could you change the word from money to a accounting or a measurement system? Would that be more appropriate?
well, yeah, you could. As a matter of fact, Switzerland deals with a accounting system.
Mm-hmm.
They have a card. I don't know if you heard about it, but they have a card.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 6 inches by 8 inches,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got all the lines,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got money in and money out.
Mm-hmm.
And people join in a small village, and they just get together and elect a banker.
Yeah.
So if somebody becomes a banker, and then let's say there's 50 people, they give them all a dividend right from the start, $100, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go purchase different things like a pot of honey,
Mm-hmm.
and they would say, okay, that's $10. So if you go buy one, you put $10 in the money out for your card, and the other one puts money in on his card,
Mm-hmm.
and and then we exchange like that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's good about that is that nobody can fraudulently make a dollar bill or this card belongs to you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty hard to make it illegal kind of thing because your name is on it, your member number,
Mm-hmm.
and people all know about you, and they all know each other kind of thing.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
in this village, it works really good.
Yeah, that to me makes good sense that you're actually working within your local community in a small fashion, and you're able to support each other just with your if you like your surpluses to do that. Is that the I mean, what are some other tasks that the pilgrims are doing in Africa, Eves?
Uh, Other types of work, we're trying to build a uh, we're trying to build a Michael journal in Africa.
Okay.
Just like in Canada, in Rougemont, Quebec.
Yeah.
We're trying to make them go on their own.
Yeah.
Right now, they need assistance from us once in a while.
Mhm.
So we have some pilgrims that travel over there
Mhm.
and help with the different things. But the ball is rolling pretty good. As a matter of fact, I just got an email about one of the sessions that was there in the last couple of weeks, couple of months, and they've gotten a whole bunch of people. We're talking when we have our meetings now,
Mhm.
we only talk about 50 people, but
Mhm.
they talk like 600, 500,
Mhm.
like for meetings because
Mhm.
people are all excited about the whole social credit thing. They didn't never knew about the money system,
Mhm.
and most people don't.
Mhm.
But they're comfortable right now, so they're not going to do anything. But the Africans are in a position where they need to generate some kind of income, and
Mhm.
once they understood that, that was the bomb exploded. But it's like everywhere else; you've got to make everybody else educated, and
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. In discussions I read one of now let me think. It's a Douglas pamphlet that he did. Um, it's only a small pamphlet. It's called Security Institutional and Personal. It's on the League website. Security Institutional and Personal. And in the current election that's just gone through Australia, the discussion, the debate, the decision made by the public was only ever over the administration of the existing policy. It was one party against the other. One would be a better administrator over the same policy, but there's certainly no change in the policy. Now, when you're talking about educating people in Africa or anywhere else through the Michael Journal, to me it's most profound that we actually look at policy. Should the policy be that we end up being slaves under a totalitarian regime, or should the policy be that we're actually released from this tyranny and if you like, pursuing as much freedom as is physically possible, given that government and finance needs to be placed in a bridle, in a halter, if you like, to control it, to limit it. I think it's most profound. Security, institutional and personal. I'll put it at the bottom of this video for anyone who's interested. A link they can actually download it and read it. Eves.
yeah. Well, it's certainly something that we can the fact that this problem exists. How do we educate people?
Mhm.
How are we going to put it out there?
Mhm.
Uh, It's not. I mean, even a politician don't know where money comes from.
Mm,
You just have to ask anybody on the street. I
hmm
do door to door,
Yeah.
okay, from time to time, and I'll ask somebody. Usually they enter into the conversation just right out of the blue. There, you just knock on the door. How you doing? I'm with the Michael Journal, uh, and then we get into the conversation of economy,
hmm
taxes, and all that.
hmm
And I ask the people, "Do you know where money comes from?"
mm,
Everybody shrugs their shoulder, and they just don't know.
Yeah.
Politicians are the same.
Yeah.
I asked a politician one time, I says, "I'd like to show you something in the Constitution."
Mm,
Yeah, show it to me. I said, "Well, get me your book." They don't have a book. They don't know nothing about the Constitution. They go to university, they barely touch on it.
Yeah.
So right away, they don't have the right rules. Our
hmm
Constitution are being ignored as it is.
hmm
So, I mean, yeah, even the bankers don't know where money comes from.
mm,
Unbelievable.
I know it's
Bankers
fascinating.
don't really understand the
Yeah. Yeah. On our on the league website, we've actually got a Bank of England, the Quarterly Journal 2014 first quarter, which talks about credit creation in a modern society, and they take you through it. And I think there's also a link there to a video. Now it's fascinating because they tell you that they create money out of nothing, and that every creation of money is actually in the form of a loan, a new loan, an interest-bearing debt to
yes.
either an individual or a company. And it's the creation of new money is always in the form of a debt. And if we look at the world debt clock, we'll see that the whole world owes more than the entire production for 3 years of every single machine, country, nation, individual. The entire GDP for 3 years, if the whole world produced it, gave it all to Mars and got payment for it, and Mars paid off our debt, then it would be clear. But the fact is that even as we are producing, we are also generating further debt because there are consumables, there's energy, there's wages that go out, there's all these things. And so debt is entirely irredeemable. We will never, ever get out of debt under the existing financial rules. Eves.
They have this magic wand.
Hmm.
That's what the bottom line is.
Mm-hmm.
It's we've got to let people know about this. But you know what? Most people will shrug their shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
They will seem to kind of, well, what are we going to do? If you're comfortable in a country like Canada, for example, most people will say, well, what can you do? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I can't pinpoint the problem, but I'm okay as it is. I'll be all right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it, it's hard to get the story to stick and say unconstitutional income tax is unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Oh, yeah, it was a war measure. Well, okay, goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
So it stays there. It doesn't seem to develop into anything at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Later, they look at it when they're really broke and they want to.
Mm-hmm.
So people are people are. I don't know. We have a hard time with this particular point to gather apostle or people to follow in the step of the Michael Journal.
Yeah.
It is a hard thing to do, and I'm sure it was meant to be hard because if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the necessity. Once there's sufficient pressure on individuals in circumstance, then they'll begin to at least look for answers. Whereas while they're comfortable, they won't. I think it's fascinating because I was reading of the a bit of history, and it was around Magna Carta 1215, and I could be confused about the Pope's name, but in 1225, the Pope sent the Dominican and Franciscan monks to Britain to evangelize it. Fascinating because what it was going on was that the monasteries, which had significant wealth, they had significant resources, land, buildings, and things like that, they were too comfortable. They were too comfortable. And I think it's really a reflection of what's actually going on today. in that it doesn't really matter whether it's an institution, an industry, or individuals. If they're too comfortable, then they're not drawn to it. The other, of course, is that they might be just too busy and there's just no time to take a breath to actually look at the system and what's actually transpiring. I mean, it's these things. We're fortunate, Eve, because I mean, I've got a little bit of grey hair, and so okay, I'm at that point where I can stop and think. I can stop and think, but in my younger days, there wasn't that much time to think.
Yeah, we have to look at things because it's bound to come down to uh, the bottom line. When we are in trouble, then things start to happen. Right now, I mean, the pollution that we have going on in the oceans, the plastic bag, for example.
Hmm.
Some people are trying to do things, but it seems like only the poor people, the simple people, will try to take care of it. You know, save whales and do this and do that, and they love humanity, of course. But then the money should be spent by the one that actually loans the money to create the businesses to that causes the pollution. But
Hmm.
it doesn't reach there.
Yeah, I know.
People,
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there. I think there's a book called The Waste Makers, and it's essentially that in industry, they design items, whether it's anything, whether it's clothing, manufacturing, buildings, whatever, and they design it for a certain life cycle. Now, when I was in the Navy at 15, I was issued with what I called number eights and also some pajamas. Now, those pajamas made by the Commonwealth Clothing Factory, I think it was. Those pajamas I gave to my brother when I left the Navy. I was 18. Now, he had them, he was still wearing them 30 years later. All right, so those pajamas were at least 33 years old and they were still there. He was still wearing them. Now, you get an item of clothing, you won't get 3 years out of it, let alone 33 years. And I think that to me, it shows something. It shows that the manufacturer of anything is constantly on a treadmill. They have to constantly manufacture in order to put the products onto market to recover the cost of it, to sell the products, to recover the cost in order to pay the bills that are continually recurring. It's a never ending cycle. And yet the batch process of finance is always it's once a year you go for a credit. You go for a credit call on your industry, on your factory, and the banks will loan you, but at the end of the year you've got to not only pay the loan or be in a position to service the loan, but you've also got the interest component. And of course that continues to grow. The the Bank of England, 1694, the establishment of the Bank of England, and of course the establishment of the national debt. And Britain has never, ever been out of debt since then. And I have all the confidence to say that I wouldn't be surprised that Canada has exactly the same story.
yes, we are in debt. I heard even in the trillions,
Mm,
1 or 2 trillion.
mm-hmm,
United States is 20, 25 trillion in debt. So
mm-hmm,
how these debts? It's not government spending. It's not
mm,
somebody traveling overseas. Hey, you use the taxpayers' money to travel here and there. You know, people don't look any further than their nose.
mm.
Uh,
No, see,
it,
the system itself is generating the debts, and that's the thing. What people don't recognise is that every year the debts are continuing to escalate, and it doesn't matter how much you manufacture, the debts continue to escalate. The financial system it's not a self-liquidating system, and it can be demonstrated just simply by looking at the debt clock. If it was self-liquidating, why is the world in so much debt and irredeemable? It's impossible to get out of. So, to me, the message of social credit is most profound, looking at the details of the financial system. But I look on social credit as part of it is the financial system, part of it is the environmental system, because I believe social credit has an answer in that when you produce something, you produce it of such a quality that it lasts and it lasts a lifetime correctly, not becomes obsolete in a short window. And to me, that's a solid environmental answer. I believe that the environmentalists would be very interested in undoing what the waste makers are actually doing. Eves.
Yeah, they have their own way, but believe me, well, we know about that.
Mm,
It's it's it, it's going to have to come up with we're going to have to come up with some kind of a system. Unless myself, I look at the financial system, and they don't seem to care about money now. The money is not what they really care about.
hmm
We go further than that. It's more like controlling the people
Power.
and
Yeah.
lead them into a way that it'd be like a communism
hmm
idea.
hmm
So this is what I see because it cannot keep going this way.
hmm
We're going to have to either pay the debt or they're going to cancel it, which I doubt.
hmm
But you never know. You do with a little prayer. Sometimes we get some favors, but
mm,
I think it's going to come to some cross. I hear all kinds of stories. Of course, I'm on YouTube. The different people that I watch,
yeah.
listening to what do you call it? The phony news there,
Fake news.
and
Yeah.
sometimes,
Mm, mm,
like I heard a story about Walmart, and they closed down like 5 or 6 stores in the United States, and they're gathering the people there to like the homeless and stuff like that,
mhm,
and to give them a home kind of thing. I don't know what they do with them,
mm,
but I heard you hear stories here and there. It's
mhm,
not normal stories.
mhm.
Uh, so you always ask yourself questions. Well, what's next? What are they going to do?
Yeah. 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 I see it as interesting, in the sense that I think it's the challenge for the Christian today. Is the circumstances to me are no less or more chaotic than they were at the time of Christ. They're no more or less chaotic. The fact is that you had this enormous power of life and death over people, and essentially unaccountable government. And that's, to me, that's what totalitarianism or communism is about. Or capitalism. It's essentially unaccountable. Everyone who's in this upper echelons is completely unaccountable. They're not paying taxes, or they care, or totally indifferent to taxes. They're totally indifferent to laws. They're a law unto themselves. They do whatever, and of course they harvest the community's real assets, not just industry, but the actual raw materials, the forests, the lakes, the water, the land, the mineral deposits. All these things they harvest, and there's nothing goes back to the individual communities. So when I talk about a consideration of these things, to me, if you like, it's an opportunity. But the thing is, you've got to think about it politically and say, well, is that party better than that party? When you actually go to choose between the two parties, you're only ever discussing administration. You're not actually discussing policy. And the policy that I'm talking about is the policy we can call social credit. We can also call Christianity, or we can also call it freedom. It's the policy of freedom. It's the policy that the individual can sit under his own, if you like, his own vine, and enjoy the fruit of his vine in his own plot of land, and enjoy the produce of that without this oppressive debt that keeps him going out chasing work, non-existent work. It's just not there. They're shutting all the industries down. Chicago, Detroit, I mean, all these huge manufacturing bases, and they've just turned the key off.
Yeah.
What are these people to do? Have they done something wrong? Is there an unwillingness to work? It's none of the above. And yet they can't get access to the productive system. And the productive system, food, clothing, shelter, is still pouring it out day after day after day. So this is why I think the story of Aberhart and the social credit movement going back into the 30s, I think it's most important. And I think we've touched on the type of thinking or rethinking that has to be done.
Yeah.
Your closing thoughts, Eves.
Well, I was just talking about it's hard to get a hold of a politician, an elected politician. You try to meet with them. Oh, I'm busy. I can't do this. I can't do that.
Mhm.
and they only do it even the mayor of a town.
Mhm.
It's hard to get a hold of if he knows what you're going to ask him or talk about.
Mhm.
And while I'm on that, I'm just thinking about this new law that Justin Trudeau
Mhm.
in Canada, the Prime Minister of Canada, is trying to pass.
Mhm.
And we talk about freedom. This is something that would make us lose a lot of our freedom.
Mhm.
We wouldn't be able to demonstrate against different groups and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So it's I remember reading stories about Russia
Mhm.
and or China. Nobody can talk against the government
Mhm.
or anything like that.
Mhm.
But this is a Christian guy that was arrested on the weekend or early this week for a sermon. He's a born again Christian or something, and he's talking about God loves you and everything else. They arrested him, put him under handcuffs,
Mhm.
and took him to jail.
Mhm.
And this is part of Justin Trudeau's law
Mhm.
that he wants to pass. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in.
Mhm.
My closing thoughts. I really enjoyed doing this,
Mhm.
and I hope we're going to do some more.
Mhm.
And I'm going to certainly get a hold of uh, my mother house there and talk to them about this.
Mhm.
And I like the idea that this is a Freedom Forum is a
Mhm.
good name.
Yeah.
It doesn't attack anybody. It doesn't. It's
Mhm.
a very good sign of so people will definitely maybe take a look at it and say, well, what is this all about?
Mhm.
Let's look at it, and then
Yeah.
maybe some people will be. My grandson, for example, he's one that I hope maybe that he would become a social creditor one day.
Mhm.
It could happen, but and I mean it's anybody. If you want to be honest, we all want to be honest and help each other. We want to love each other,
That's right.
and this is
Yeah.
the only way that we're going to be able to do it.
Yeah. Social credit. Social credit means faithful dealings. Faithful dealings between peoples. That's what the culture is all about. It's the faithful dealings between people. And to me, it's most profound. There's one more booklet I'm going to recommend, and I'll put it on. Hopefully, I'll remember to put it on. It's by a bloke called Mayer, Mayer, and it's called Brainwashing, and it's to do with the Korean War and how the American prisoners were actually brainwashed and they were actually deconstructed in the prison. And in my view, that's what we are experiencing in the free world today because it's not free. I believe we are in a prison, and it is the, if you like, the communizing of all of the free world. The Iron Curtain didn't come down. The Iron Curtain spread its tentacles across the free world. This is Arnie Luks at the Freedom Forum. Thank you, Yves Potvin, for a lovely time with you.
Thank you, Arnis.
No worries. Look forward to it again soon. Cheers, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Take care. Goodbye.